This projector was provided by B&H Photo. If you're interested in picking this up, please use the links in the video description. What's up guys? Today we're going to be checking out Optoma's new 4K ultra short throw laser projector, the CinemaX P1. The P1 retails for $3,300 at the time of this video. Inside, we get some documentation, the power cord, an HDMI cable, an accessories box containing a backlit remote, a USB cable, and a template. Size-wise, it measures 22.1 inches wide by 5.1 inches high by 15 inches deep, and it weighs a hefty 25.25 pounds. So it's a sizable and somewhat heavy projector. Taking a closer look, you'll see the P1 has an inbuilt soundbar with Dolby Audio support. There's 2 mid-bass drivers and 2 full-range drivers rated at 40 watts. Around back are connections for USB, 2 HDMI ins with support for ARC on HDMI 1, an optical output, a LAN input, a 3.5mm audio in, and 1 more USB connection. On the left side, there's an additional USB and HDMI input, as well as the exhaust vents here and on the right side. If you want to get the projector perfectly squared, there are adjustable feet on the bottom corners. On top is the power button on the right corner, and the lens is centrally mounted. Controlling the P1, Optoma includes a nice quality backlit remote control. I believe it's made out of metal, unlike the cheap plastic one that was included with the UHZ65 that we reviewed earlier. Now, being laser powered, the Optoma is rated at 30,000 hours using Eco mode or 20,000 hours on normal. It's got a contrast rating of 1,500,000 to 1 per their specs, and it's got 3,000 ANSI lumens of brightness. As I mentioned earlier, this is a DLP projector with 4K resolution. It uses Texas Instruments .47 chip, which starts off with a resolution of 1920 by 1080. It doesn't use the .66 chip that starts off at a higher resolution. By quadrupling 1080p, it's able to achieve 8.3 million pixels on screen. So while not native 4K, it will give you true 4K resolution, unlike projectors like Epson, which will only give you 4 million pixels on screen by doubling their 1080p resolution, rather than quadrupling it. Now, even though the chip isn't 8 million pixels from the start, you will still get all 8 million pixels on screen. It's not native 4K, it's true 4K, if that makes any sense. So this is marketed as a television replacement, or rather a smart television replacement. So it's got smart features built in like Amazon Alexa and Google Assistant support, as well as many apps. And bonus, for 3D fans, it's got 3D support using DLP Link glasses. For setup, I'll be using a 92-inch daylight screen with a gain of 0.9. DLP projectors typically don't have the best black levels, that's why I'm using a lower gain to help enhance blacks. Now, in order for me to get a 92-inch screen size, I'll be placing the projector 6 inches away from the screen. If you want to get a larger image, you'll have to pull the projector further back. Alright, now let's run through the setup process. You can see here you have the option to set it up as a front projection or a rear projection. Here's the language selection. And this is the Bluetooth remote pairing. All you have to do is hold down the back and home buttons at the same time till it pairs. Now if you hold down the option button, you can adjust focus by tapping left or right. Daylight savings, and all that other good stuff. And here's some terms and conditions and a little advertisement for their smart app. Alright, let's take a quick look at the menu settings. For personalization, you can select a different home screen wallpaper. If you want to change your home screen shortcuts, you can pick something different by swapping them around. This here will automatically switch to the correct HDMI input or USB if you plug something into it. And here you can rename any of the HDMI ins. We've got some network settings, and for Bluetooth, you can pair this up to a Bluetooth speaker or some headphones if you want, or you could even hook it up to a keyboard. This is just some general settings. And let's just see if there's any updates. And it looks like we're on the current firmware. Internal storage, you can see there's about 9.5 gigs on board if you want to copy some movies or music to it. Here's the auto power off and a sleep timer. And for power mode, you can keep it on either Eco or Smart Home, which will let you power it on over the network. And here's some HDMI control settings. Now, just a quick peek at the menu, you'll find the image settings. We'll come back to this again when we have some video playing in the background. For display mode, you can see there's a bunch of different presets. Oh, in case you haven't noticed, just disregard the scrolling lines. It's just the laser messing around with the camera's shutter. This is the best I could get it. For dynamic range, you can have HDR come on automatically, or you can keep it off. You can also change the picture mode if an HDR movie is playing. This is the color settings, brightness mode, and pure motion. We'll look at this again when there's a video playing. This is the geometric correction, or better known as digital keystone. You've got a lot of different options here to really fine-tune and get the image as square as possible with the screen. Now, if you see right here at the bottom, I intentionally projected onto the black border. If you select this point here, you can move the image up until you get it perfectly lined up. Obviously, you'd want to try and avoid using this at all costs so you're not cutting away any pixels by digitally moving the picture around. Okay, here we've got some other HDMI settings. And if you want to change the on-screen menu's location, you can do that here. You can also set the menu timeout here as well. Now, this projector does support 3D, unlike the LG HU85 and the VAVA, although the VAVA I hear is supposed to get 3D support sometime in the future. This is the speaker settings, and there's also a bunch of presets. For all those wondering, yes, you can mount this on the ceiling if you want. There's a couple options here for that. Here's a test pattern to make sure everything is all squared up, which it is. And high altitude will kick the fan into high gear to keep it cool. Here's the focus again and the eye protection sensor. This will dim down the laser in case you get in front of it so you don't accidentally blind yourself. And this is just some general information about source and so on. Now, the Optoma runs on Android, but it isn't Google Android, so you're not going to get the Google Play Store. Instead, you're going to get Aptoide. This is the same app store that you're going to find on the VAVA. Here's a couple Optoma apps, which I didn't find very useful, so I'm not going to really get into it. There's also a media player if you want to plug a USB device into it. If you want to browse the internet, there's a web browser on board as well. This is The Lion King on 4K Blu-ray, and I don't know if you can tell, but this thing throws out a razor-sharp image. Now, if we go back into the image settings, for display mode, you'll only be able to select HDR or user if you're playing HDR content. Under dynamic range, you can turn HDR off if you want, but then you'll end up with a really dark image. Alright, here's one of my favorite scenes from the movie Sully. I like to use this shot to see how well highlight detail is maintained. The detail in the fireball is what you're going to be looking at. Under standard mode, everything looks nice, but it's still very blown out. Under film, there's a little more contrast overall, and you do get a little more detail in the bright areas. Detailed mode gets a little better, and bright mode is just unusable. I think to my eyes, the best looking one is detail. Now we'll go and adjust some of the basic picture sliders to try and recover any more information. You can see by lowering the brightness, there's a ton of different shades in there. I know it's hard to tell in the video, but -10 looks to be the best compromise between clipping whites and crushing blacks. Moving the contrast slider, you can get even more detail back. 8 looked the best from my particular screen. And of course, sharpness, we're just going to drop this all the way down since everything was looking overly sharp. Under gamma, there's a bunch of presets, but 2.4 look the best. And then we come to brilliant color. If you want the brightest image, then cranking this to 10 will do it, but then you're going to get too heavily saturated colors and the whites are going to get all clipped. Dropping this all the way down gets you even more details back. Here we can change the color temperature. Just a quick tip, if you hold down the menu button, it'll open up a quick menu on the side. Now you can adjust certain settings without having that large menu pop-up box obscure your view. I do find that the warm option looked the best. Next we have color matching and RGB gain bias settings. If you don't have any measurement tools, then I probably wouldn't go messing around with any of these settings. I'm not a professional calibrator, so I'm just going to leave these ones alone. There's also a pure motion setting if you like that soap opera look. I don't, so I always keep these types of settings off. So I think adjusting a few basic things, you can get a great image. If we compare it to the stock settings, there's clearly a big difference. Now here's a quick shot of a darker scene. You can see it's got some pretty good shadow detail. The instrument panel is visible, and so are these background items. Okay, we got to check out one other feature, which is the dynamic laser under the brightness mode. This is kind of like a dynamic iris on a bulb-based projector. The laser will change intensity to enhance black levels depending on how bright or dark a scene is. If a scene is dark, the laser will dim down. If it's bright, then the laser will brighten up. This first clip, I'll keep it at 100% brightness. You can see it stays at a constant level. If we switch over to dynamic black 1, the image will dim a bit, which does enhance blacks, but there is a slight hit in brightness and it does change the color saturation. I found the skin tones get a bit too orangey for my tastes. Dynamic black 1 is also not too aggressive when the laser is adjusting for brightness. Switching to dynamic black 2, the image gets even darker. This is pretty much not even watchable, but I'll just let the clip play out. And now for dynamic black 3. This is even worse. You can really tell when the laser is pumping. You can see when it goes up and when it goes down. It just looks bad. I would not use dynamic black 2 or 3. I do find myself bouncing between dynamic black 1 or just keeping it at 100%. For gaming, I think if you're a real competitive person, then this projector probably isn't going to cut it for you. It does feel marginally more responsive than the VAVA, but like I said, if you're a serious gamer, I wouldn't recommend you pick it up just for that. If you're a casual gamer, then I think you'll be alright. Let's talk about the focus. As for focus uniformity, with my particular unit, if I got the center perfectly focused, then the four corners would be roughly 3 clicks away from matching the center, so it's just a tiny bit soft. If you're sitting down, then you won't notice a thing. The Optoma so far has the best focus uniformity I've seen on an ultra short throw projector. Alright, if you want to keep it simple and you're not going to hook this up to a full surround sound setup, the P1 does have a built-in 40-watt soundbar, and I think it does a pretty decent job.
Right, my man.
As for how loud the projector is, I barely notice the fan when the volume is at normal volume levels. So far it is the quietest ultra short throw that I've heard, or rather didn't hear. So at the time of this video, the CinemaX P1 is a pretty hard projector to get a hold of, and I can see why. With my time with it, I do feel $3,300 is a fair asking price for the performance you're getting. I mean, you can go up to 120 inches. You won't find a television set that big for that low price. And I've never seen a TV give you this type of immersion. Performance-wise, this has the sharpest image of any ultra short throw that I've seen so far. Out of the box, you will have to tweak the image a bit to get what I find to be an excellent image. If you've got the proper measurement tools, I'm sure you can make it look even better. The only real issue that I had was with the dynamic black level settings. Settings 2 and 3 are totally unusable, although setting 1 does a good job, but the color does do some funny things when it's active. As for black levels, I found it perfectly fine. If you're watching a movie with letterboxing, you're never going to get those boxes perfectly black. If you do, then you're going to start crushing shadow details, so you're going to have to find a common ground. But once everything is dialed in, you can have an image that's just as good as any LCD television out there with some great pop. As for the overall brightness, it is spec'd at 3000 lumens. With my daylight screen, I've found it to be just as bright as the VAVA projector that I had in here recently. If you're not using an ambient light rejecting screen, I found that you can still have a well-lit room and have a very usable image. With all the lights on, I didn't feel like I was struggling all that much to see what's happening. Obviously, having all the lights off is the best way to watch any projector. Anyways, with HDR content, spectral highlights will get very bright, so you will find yourself squinting. If you want to get a little extra pop, you can always mess around with the brilliant color settings. It does start to oversaturate colors, but if you're not a real stickler for color accuracy, brilliant color will get you a very bright image. Now for those folks that are sensitive to the rainbow effect, you might want to stay away. It's pretty easy to see if you're looking for it. But if you have no idea what I'm talking about, then don't go and try to find it. I personally can see it when I want to, but I've gotten so used to ignoring it that it never really bothers me. So as I mentioned earlier, I think for the performance and sheer size of the image, I think this projector is well worth the money. I could see myself replacing my 75-inch with this projector with no problems. Oh, and I forgot to mention, the 3D works great on this too. If you turn brilliant color on, you'll get a really bright image that really pops. This projector is really quiet, and one of the most important things this projector does right, for me at least, is that it comes in black.
It does come in black.
So with the lights off, this projector just disappears in the darkness. The other guys, they only come in a white option for some reason. Well, that's all I've got for now. If you guys have any questions on the Optoma, then leave us a comment down below. If you found this video useful, then be sure to hit that like button. Follow us on social media, and if you want to get exclusive content or just have some questions, then stop by our Patreon page. Be sure to tap that subscribe button if you haven't already, and we'll see you guys again in the next one.